And then we are back with more information regarding the renewed covenant from the Aramaic Hebrew perspective of the word. You must understand there are a couple of understandings, and those are the most importantly the Hebrew understanding of the scriptures and then the Greco-Roman understanding. Okay? The Hebrew understanding is holy from the Creator. The Greco-Roman is pagan. Okay, so let's start from the viewpoint of the Creator. So then, the previous video, we were talking regarding the tabernacle. In fact, the true meaning of it is the tent of gathering. This is where Yahweh came to the earth and He inhabited. It was a tent. So from the original plan coming from above and then down to the earth comes then the tent. He lived in a tent. The second portion was then Moshe, when he was on the mountain receiving the instructions, he only received the vision of it, as if you would give instructions of an equipment and then you would give a quick overview of a picture. This is the description, this is what it's like. Do it for the earth, and then it vanished. It's very practical. There is no tabernacle in heaven or tent in heaven. It was given instructions, a quick understanding of the picture of what it should be, and then it vanished away. It was made for the earth. So then, the other area then is when people they begin to study and understand there is not a tabernacle in heaven, then a person can easily understand the situation regarding death. When the people die in the Mashiach, they are going to rest. Very simple. Those that do not have the Mashiach, then they're going to be in torment, the first death, spoken of by Yahweh Yeshua in Revelation. That's it. A person is not going to heaven. And then the other point is the vengeance. Vengeance is only reserved for Yahweh Himself. That's His. It's His project. Okay? So we have our project, the Creator has His project, and then the Son had His project. And Ruach HaKodesh has His project. Each of us were given duties. Okay? The Creator, His part of it is the vengeance. That's His. The Son was the salvation plan. Came through Him. He came to do and to complete the spring feast. The vengeance is the autumn feast. We are living in Leviticus 23rd chapter 22nd verse yet. At the very, very end of the 22nd verse. And then there is not a person then dying going to heaven. A person remains in a resting place until the whole situation gets resolved. The practical point is the reason why so many of these Greco-Roman junk came out, it was to control the people because they couldn't explain these areas. Do you understand? They had to steal these from the Hebrews and then they had to shut them up so they could go on with their deceiving. Do you understand? So, in other words, the Hebrews then, they had the scriptures, it was the truth, but then they were simply shut up. And those then manuscripts, they were stolen, twisted, and they began to lie to the whole world. That's when then came the period of the deceiving, the deceitful spirits. They simply deceive. So then, when a person is never went to the congregation, never was exposed to the camp, a person can't explain these areas. So then what did the Greco-Roman did? They twisted them around because they knew they couldn't explain it anyway. So they would be under subjection because of the lack of knowledge. And since there were no camps, so they could make inquiries from the very Hebrew people that came from the Creator, then they were stuck. But Let's be thankful to Yahweh because these areas are being cleaned up. So then a person begins to understand, okay, so then there is then a tent, and the tent was for the earth. Well, that makes sense. He does not want a tent up there in heaven. It was a simple understanding, a picture or a vision after the instructions were given. Okay, this is what the instructions are, and then observe this, what you should do. And then gone. That's for the earth. So then later, when then the Hebrews received Yahshua or Yahweh Yeshua, and then many of those outside would be Yahshua, then what went on? Then they would go out in groups, and then they would form holy lands around the world. And the same line of teaching from Genesis and then to Revelation. It is very, very, very simple. And the reason why so many people they don't go to church is because when they go there, oh, that's nonsense. So in themselves, from the part of the Creator, believe it or not, there is a portion in them from the Creator that's stating, oh, that's junk. That's divine. It's the divine area that they are not even aware of it. Because truly doesn't make any sense. Have you perceived when you go to certain churches, establishments, there is no church outside the camp anyway. They say, oh, this is what you should do. You should do this, you should do that. And that person, yak. Because the truth of it, when it comes from the Hebrew understanding, from the original scriptures, a person is delighted of hearing it. And they are not obligated to do any portion of it. That's the work of the Spirit. They are only presented with the information pertaining of the scriptures, and then they make a decision on their own. They are not obligated to give tithes. They are not obligated of being saved. They are not obligated of having any part of it. When first they are exposed to the understandings of the truth, they are not obligated. Later, when the Spirit then begins to prompt them, then it's their decision, making a step forward, and then returning to the camp, having more teachings at the gate, and then they make a decision. They are not obligated. That's why the truth sets them at liberty. That's why the scripture is so valid and so precious, because it doesn't require of you. Because only those that the Spirit, Ruach Kodesh, prompts, those then they go forward. But some people, they don't. It's a normal fact. It doesn't bear testimony with them. But those people, when they are exposed to the real truth, then they themselves develop an interest in it. So from the 100% that receives the real truth, 100% then later they get saved. Because they were not obligated, they were not forced. As we spoke before, the instructions, the whole Torah, the instructions, those were made for the camp, not for the outside. A person would be insane if the Creator would think that the whole Bible should be obeyed by the Gentiles when they never were exposed before. It's not practical. No, they only receive the truth part of it. Only the truth. And then when the Spirit prompts them, then they may return. So then, evaluating the plan of salvation, then Yahweh, the true Creator, had mercy upon the slaves in Egypt, His people, and they were groaning, they were in anguish, and they wanted salvation. So then He came with a mighty hand as a shepherd, and He rescued them out of Egypt. With a mighty hand, then signs and wonders, and then came through the ocean, and then near the mountain. And that's when the nearing line began. They couldn't get to him at the mountain, but they came near him. And then the whole concept then later would become a nearing line that was established in Shavuot. So then they received the laws. From there then they built the tent of gathering. It became the whole understanding of then the Gentiles later would gather around the camp. It is precisely a perfect line of thought ever since it started. So then later, they trained for more than 1,000 years for the coming of Yahweh Yeshua. He would substitute the sacrifices from animals to himself, to himself, so they would not anymore sacrifice. That was the only point. And then, when he ascended, he gave them orders, go out, then form holy lands around the world. When he said to go 2 by 2s, it was to the lost of Israel first, because they were already in their perimeters. But then later, before he ascended, he gave the order, when go outside of the legal perimeter of the land, then make up holy lands, as the land was demarcated as from the Euphrates to the Nile, so then do the same. You would have the power of delineating a region where this salvation plan would be then granted to the Gentiles. It never changed. The plan never changed. So then any form of pagan understanding from any other nation trying to be mixed with the holy areas of Yahweh then would never do it. Because the plan ever since it started in Egypt, then throughout the entire area until the closing of the age. So then this is how people get saved. It's very simple. A person from the outside that was never exposed, a person gets very interested because it doesn't force them to study. They do it because when they hear, and then it sets them at liberty. You know, that tension inside of them that they have to do certain situations, and then it gets released. They are simply presented with the facts. It then sets them at ease. And then later they themselves, because they were interested in it, they begin to investigate on their own, but they are not forced to do it. In terms of heaven, the very important point is this: from heaven comes only the orders. Okay? Orders, they come from heaven to the earth, never otherwise. There is no people going to heaven, and there is no people going to judgment seats. There is no people standing before him to give a report of what they did. There is none of this. There is no link from earth to heaven in a human perspective. This was made it up from the Greco-Roman pagan understanding. Because there were so many spiritists around that area, and they thought they could mesmerize the people by lying that they could go to heaven and do certain situations. This was made it up. There is no relation from earth to heaven, only from heaven to earth. Came from heaven the understanding of the tent and how it should be made. Vanished. That's gone. There is the understanding up there of what was done, of course, but then it does not have up there. It was shown, vanished, gone. Then Yahshua came, did his part, spring feast was completed, and Shavuot, the nearing line from the near the mountain, and then the nearing line of the world. When people hear from the Spirit, that should be only used by the Hebrews. This line was stolen. In 1009, then Satan the deceiver had taken over. And then the deceitful spirits, they blinded the whole world. But then in the near future, he's going to be released from this nearing line. And then people, they're going to start realizing, oh, that's what it was made for. So then the Gentiles, when they were relinked, they had to be linked with the Spirit. Not only themselves linking their soul and their spirit, but they themselves would be relinked. So they could receive nourishment. And then they would show up at the gate of the Hebrews often for more teaching. Because only the Hebrews set apart, they can function in the 7 functions of Ruach HaKodesh. It's very simple. It's very uncomplicated. It then sets you, the hearer, at liberty. When a person dies in the Mashiach, in Yahweh Yeshua, in Yahshua, a person is not going to heaven. Okay? A person simply goes to rest. As you would go and rest at night and you get up in the morning, that's what you would be doing. You're going to be resting. And there is a resting place where the soul is going to rest. Only the soul. The spirit, the functioning link that was linked from soul and spirit with the Father in heaven, with Yahweh in heaven, then returns to Him. And then your soul goes to rest. Until the new earth is established. Because we were made for the earth. We have no trade to do in heaven. There is absolutely no link from earth to heaven in human understanding. We don't have any kind of a relation with heaven. We die in the Mashiach, we are going to rest. And then, to prove this point, verify in Yaakov, James. Gives a very, very interesting part, because then it shows the importance of understanding the souls. And then he said in the 21st, and so then throw away what is defiled and the myriads of sins, evil, far away from yourselves, and be humble. Receive the word that was implanted from our nature. He's speaking of as being a Hebrew set apart. And then of course that is able to make your souls later to return from the resting places. Coming from the dead means the soul then that was resting would be coming from the resting place. Because it's a spiritual understanding. This portion is spiritual. He's speaking a fact of the spirit in relation with the soul. So then the soul returns from then the resting place. When the new earth is established, then this soul coming from the resting place is going to be placed in a glorified body with the spirit in it already. And then we are going to have then a celebration. It's simple, extremely simple. So the whole heaven situation from the human perspective, from earth to heaven, does not exist. And then a person can understand, so then whatsoever is from the earth to heaven was made it up. Of course. Yahweh, He only gives orders. He doesn't take orders. He analyzes each petition of His people, and He grants as per His schedule and His desire, but He's not taking orders from anybody. So there is no concept from earth to heaven in human terms. So then when a person is saved, relinked, then a person is then born again, and then the spirit of the person is linked with the nearing line of the world. It must be cleansed and clean. From there, when a person dies, the soul is going to the resting place. It's not going to heaven, only going to the resting place. Those that do not have the Mashiach, they are going to torment until the closing of the age, until this earth is destroyed. Because then at the very end, before the consummation of the whole situation, then those souls that were not obedient, they're going to be thrown in the lake of fire. The lake of fire is going to be the earth burning with the sulfur, as we understand from Sodom and the cities of the plain. And then Shimon said, the elements of the earth is going to be burned with the fervent heat. It's a shadow of the future. Yahweh had shown what iniquity causes then to those who are not from Him. They are going to be burned in the future via shout of sulfur. Those people that are going to experience glorification in the body while in the earth, from the earth going to heaven, are those then found in the earth, when then is going to come a time where the armies are going to be around the camps and the holy city, and they think there is no chance in the world for them to survive. Then Yahweh Yeshua comes in the clouds and rescues them. As they ascended up, then their bodies must be changed into a glorified body, because they're going to be in His presence. That's the only time. Absolutely the only time. And you want more of this interesting point? After then He's taking His people up, then their souls are going to be returning to the resting place. Because the glorified body must be done, because they're going to be in His presence. And when He has taken them out of the vision of the earth, then their souls are going to return to the resting place. Because they have to wait until the whole earth then is destroyed. So there is a line of steps of formation that must be not violated. And there are other areas a person can obviously do more research and study, because they say they're going to be taken up into His presence. Okay, so then what is the Hebrew perspective? They're going to vanish away. Since we understand that in His presence a person must be in glory, because He is in glory. So then a person can understand what it means when a person is ascending with Him. But the true perspective of this is then when a person is going up, transforms, goes to His presence, and then from there a person, then the soul is going to the resting place as the others. Because the whole age must be completed first. It has to be closed. Because it would not be proper then for those people being in His presence and then going to heaven. Okay, what about the others at the resting place? No, they're going to be with Him. They're going to visit in the sky. From there they're going to the resting place, waiting until the new earth is established. Then at once they come together for the celebration. So then the Father had the celebration with the elders, with the 70 elders, Moshe, Aaron and his sons. They had a meal up on a mountain. So Father Yahweh had His meal. and then later the son would have his meal. But they are both together in this situation, obviously. So there are steps of formation while explaining. It must fit the entire understanding of the biblical perspective. And another point a person must understand is this. And then his people being gathered, going to go up, and then from there, obviously their souls then are going to be placed in a resting place. Because it's a spiritual situation, then waiting for then the new earth to be established. Then the whole group, they come out as a people. So then much more coming up. Please stay tuned.